I bump into a lot of business people and a lot of CIOs who say, IT is so strategic. It's so strategic we couldn't possibly outsource anything. What's your perspective, your answer to that when you hear that from your different vantage points?
The important thing is that we are in a situation, or we are in an environment where just being strategic does not mean that you cannot outsource. You need to find the right partner, you need to find the right ecosystem, and ensure that those strategies, those key parameters, and those important aspects of your business are understood, taken care of, and delivered.
I think I would add to that just like whether it's IT or anything else that's strategic, it's about how you structure the deal and how you manage the deal over time, right? So everyone gets very excited about the decision up front. I think as long as you scope it correctly and you set the expectations correctly, but then you manage that over time, you govern it well, you can get the same results, if not better. I mean, you're buying capability in many cases.
How in your businesses do you stay current with this rapidly changing tech environment?
Well, in our case, I think events like this are kind of a good way to stay up to date. I think it's pretty important to be tuned, or I would say, I don't know how to say that. I know how to say it in Spanish. Sorry, guys.
Yo lo traduzco.
That's okay. But I think things like this can make you be up to date. I mean, you just have to focus on your business and then come here and hear what's going on around the IT world, and I think that's a good way to go.
You need to keep your eyes and ears open. We need to accept the things, analyze the things, and ensure that what is it that we want to do from the objective perspective, whether it is IT, whether it is manufacturing, or whether it's any specific business that we are in. Just to give you an example, take social media. People were skeptical of social media. They still are in many cases. But rather than it being an option, it is a necessity today. So we need to adapt ourselves. We need to keep and embrace the new technology, the innovation that's happening. And the best way to do is keep the eyes and ears open and analyze what is it that is going to help you in your business objectives, and do that.
Let me add up something. I think you need a good partner to do that. I mean, let the experts do their job. If you are IT experts and we are finance experts, I would say, I think a good partner can keep you with the new ideas working.
Periodically, inside of a trusted relationship, say, okay, tell me what you're seeing out there, what's new, because you really want not just their knowledge, but you want the knowledge of their clients also, and I think that's hugely important. Are you seeing cost takeout and cost efficiencies as the primary push from upstairs, or is it add business value, or is it security? Which one of those three do you see coming down?
All of them. I mean, it's a mix. You have to have all of them. They always push for cost reduction. Mm-hmm. We have the risk complexity and the compliance complexity always, and we always have to drive value. I mean, imagine a bank without any web services or IT services. I mean, you have to innovate, you have to add value, so I think all of them are part of it. Should be part of it.
I see the push as not as specific as, we want you to do this outsourcing, obviously. I think it's much more outcome oriented, right? We want to stay ahead of the curve in this space, or we want to challenge the model here, that sort of thing. And so, we don't have a technology committee of our board, as far as I can tell, and it's a great concept. In fact, I think it's one I'm going to try and take back. I think, it rests to the kind of CIOs and other folks like us to balance those out. But I do think it is really important to understand what the objectives are. In fact, one of my kind of core tenets in any outsourcing is to identify and write down in indelible ink what the objectives are, including what the financial objectives are and the business objectives, what the scope is, and who the decision maker is. Because if you don't do that up front, you run into a lot of trouble.
I've got a question about currency risk. I think one of the challenges that we have in looking at Latin America is, choose a country and there's a lot of really good ones out there, and I certainly have folks in a number of them. But, if you look at the horizon 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the road, we look at, changes in currency, and it affects pricing, and ultimately, at the end of the day, pricing is a huge contributor to the value proposition. So what can we do to minimize or offset those risks?
I tend to focus on who has the better expertise on kind of FX hedging and kind of currency risk management. And if you're a domestic firm, so TD Ameritrade as an example is a domestic firm with essentially no interests in Latin America at the moment. We don't have any outsourced relationships there. We have no idea what we'd be doing in terms of managing that. So I would partner with the provider to make sure that they're essentially taking the FX risk, but I understand what the commercial implications of that are. If I'm at a Citigroup or a major global bank, I'm reasonably certain that I can do it better and cheaper and faster. And so I would make sure I partner with my treasury folks to make sure they agree.
Specifically for currency risk, we need to work together with the customer. You cannot have a situation where the currency risk is either 100% taken by the provider or 100% taken by the customer. We need to find a common path, and we need to ensure that for the win-win situation to continue and succeed in that scenario, we abstain from choosing hyperinflationary countries or locations like Venezuela, like Argentina, etc., specifically talking about Latin America. So I think there are various ways that you can deal with it, and that is one of the ways. And then you put a target. Okay, if it is plus minus X%, I'm going to go and revisit it, and let's see, and put all the numbers and information on the table. Take a decision. What is it that we need to do?
And one more thing I would add, I'm sorry, Toby, is it's important to look at the business case over time as well. I think people do the business case and they do what they do with the contract, which is stick it in the cupboard. And the problem with that, of course, is that 3 years hence, the business case may be underwater because, either cost of living or inflation or other things have gone away that no one expected. And, even with the best planning, it may not work out. Exactly. So it's important to reassess.
If you do a deal, a nearshoring deal, and the currency goes the wrong way, the reason for you doing that deal just went out the window, and I guarantee you your bosses won't go, oh, well, here's some more budget, knock yourself out. We understand that the Brazilian shekel went up 20%. Not sure they use shekels in Brazil. Where's Fernando? But I think you need to think about it three ways, right? If you're lucky enough to be a global company that sells stuff in many different countries, your finance people are doing some sort of hedging, right? You have to be living in a cave not to do that. And you have to address one of the fundamental problems in IT, which is the IT and the finance people don't communicate well, and they don't hang out together, they don't team well. For most of my career, 20 years of my career, I dual reported to finance. So I was sort of forced to do that growing up in that mode. And one of the things you do in that model is you go to finance and say, look, here are all my contracts. I've got this much currency risk. Could you fold that into your hedging strategy? And they will. And then you're covered. If you're not lucky enough to be in a company like that, you have to think about one more thing, not just the currency risk, but the wage inflation. Because while wage inflation may not show up in the bills that you get, and it may not abrogate the contract you've got, what'll happen is you will get lower quality people, and the program will get spread out because they're a business. And I think the question is, now that IT and finance and procurement are starting to play better together, do you see that as one of the agenda items of being more agile towards the vendor community, or do we really not?